Because here's the thing, right? Travel is a part science, but it is also very much an art, I think. And true art, the human side of it, right, can never be fully replicated or automated, I think.
As WIT marks its 20th year in 2025, we turn the spotlight on our community to tell their stories and share their views on the evolution of online travel and technology. Conversations on Turning 20 is the collective story of WIT. As a Chinese saying goes, 以古为鉴,可以知形体. By using history as a mirror, one can understand the rise and fall of things.
We launched a company, Venture Republic, in Tokyo back in January 2001, a long time ago. That was right after the dot-com boom had already crashed and burned completely. So now, not many people actually probably remember, but for those people like us, actually, so back in the days who wanted to actually start the internet business, we remember very vividly. So, and needless to say, no investors in the market was showing the interest in us or any other internet companies in the regions, maybe even around the world. So, but luckily, we somehow managed to find the two investors who are willing to back us. One is the Mitsubishi Corporation, which happened to be my former employer, and the other one is actually was a local venture capital. That was it. No one else. And they value our company at the zero premium. So it was an ultimate choice. So we want to take that money to start the company without ownership, or without much ownership, or you just walk away and then wait for the next moment. Since me and my co-founders have just graduated from business school, we had basically no money, right? So we ended up with actually taking the cash on the table. So we started a company with just 0.9% equity ownership. So that's, less than 1%. Not exactly the same, the startup actually dream you hear about on a podcast or something like that, right? So this is the very unusual way to start. And the market back then, Japan wasn't really booking any travel online yet. So hardly anyone was, because the broadband didn't exist in homes. So everyone was actually using a dial-up modems. Do you remember the sound like beep, right? So you basically get a bill by the minute from your telecom provider just for being online. That was a back then. So yeah, so our early days were nothing but the challenges. But that's kind of what made it fun at the same time. After those like a tough 5 or 6 years, we got through. We are finally able to ride a wave of early stage kind of online travel penetration in the Japanese market. And then fast forward, as a result, we managed to IPO in the Japanese stock exchange in the year 2008. However, though, the founder, including myself, couldn't even share, couldn't even, sorry, sell the single share at the IPO. Since you remember the story, right? Fast forward, we are still owning less than 10% of a stock. So, i.e., 90% of stocks are still owned by those two investors. So that was a very unusual IPO. And then 1 month later, the Lehman shock happened, financial crisis. So our stock price tanked. And then what happened was the boss of those two major investors who still own 90% of a company came us came to us and saying that they wanted to sell all of their shares. so so that was one of the toughest and most unexpected things that happened in our journey, I think. So so what happened was we ended up is actually using most of our cash reserve that we actually earned and accumulated um, from our business operation over the course of previous 8 years to buy back the large portion of the shares from those investors. But it still wasn't enough, unfortunately. So what I ended up is doing is actually trying to find a new investor to take that big chunk of our shares. I successfully actually found the one investor. But anyway, soon after that, we decided to actually do a management buyout, fully leveraged by the commercial bank. And I still remember, signing my personal guarantee for more than $20 million because of because it was necessary to actually complete the transaction. So my hands were shaking. So but through those like critical events, I think it's the founders, including myself, finally became the full owner of the company. That was a key defining moment for us. You know, after many years, we wanted to actually own the company, run our own show, everything else. We couldn't do it, but we finally took a risk and then do so. And a year later, Yahoo Japan, which is the largest technology company in Japan, back then and still is, they acquire our e-commerce business along with the travel business we had, which gave us a sizable capital gain. So we are able to actually use that capital to pay off all the debt to the bank. And from there, we decided to focus fully on the travel business and to expand our business outside of Japan. And then actually, so from this stage on, the WIT really helped us to take us to the next step, right? So because we started investing in travel startups across Asia, many of them are the companies, the startups actually who we met through the WIT events. And one of those startups was a company called Locations, based in Singapore, which we later acquired. And it eventually became Trip 101, which is now one of our major businesses. So WIT ecosystem has really played a huge role in our businesses. not just to kind of organically grow in our Japanese businesses, but also to help us actually to expand our businesses geographically. And then one last things I probably wanted to add, you know, back to the Harvard Business School. Actually, the school, not only me, but also my co-founder Kenichi studied. So the school ended up is writing a case study about our story. I just share with you from IPO to MB, the management buyout. So that really mean a lot to both of us. So that was actually kind of another kind of a key defining moment that okay, so we did something, and then kind of a school recognized us too, and so our business has really been around with many things actually kind of coming together, including a lot of my experiences from the web. I think that we have to really recognize this that this industry has um, definitely matured a lot over the past 2 decades. In the history of it too. Um, so so I this is a kind of my reminder, and then also reminder to our industry. The opportunity yesterday are not the opportunities today. I think game has changed a lot. So um, so that doesn't sound kind of a great to many people, right? Because people are running a businesses, you know, that was created in the past and is still going on. However, though, I think it's a one another thing that we don't want to actually kind of forget is that the travel and tourism industry accounts for over 10% of a global GDP. That is massive. And then it's one of the few industry that continue to grow. And then this is also very important. And then this growth is happening in both develop and developing countries, right? So that alone actually tells us that there's still a ton of opportunity out there, a ton, and then there will be a ton of opportunity going forward. So we are very fortunate in a fortunate situation. And so that being said, I mean there are so many interesting opportunity. However, though, I think the one thing that I particularly wanted to highlight is that the boundary between travel and kind of everyday life is getting blurrier, right? And then much more intertwined, I think. And that kind of opens up the huge possibilities, I think. So we've been traditionally thinking about travel, but I think it's actually completely, you know, revolutionized in a way because the life and travel is actually kind of connecting each other. And take the alternative accommodation or digital nomads, as a good example, I think, right? Those trends actually kind of accelerated during the COVID times, but they are definitely clearly here to stay, I think. You and me actually are working from home, right? And some of our friends actually started actually kind of hopping around the different places and then work from there and then create the new businesses, whatever it is, right? Uh, um, but what I really feel now is actually that along with this scene, I think more and more people are traveling for the meaning of their life. I think not just for sightseeing or relaxations, hanging out on a beach or whatever, but for something that connects with their personal passions or values. I think.
I don't have exact statistics or numbers here, but in general, I can say, yeah, that market is quite huge. If you go to Gangnam area in Korea, and for example, yeah, a couple of years ago, I had a chance to staying in Andaz Gangnam, which is very famous place for those cosmetic surgeries. And I was standing in the balcony, and I was starting to counting the how many cosmetic surgery hospital is over there. The counting was quite huge, even in one street. So from that kind of side, yeah, I can say that industry is quite huge.
There's a trend in Japan called oshikatsu. It's about the activity where people support someone they admire. Maybe some idols, anime characters, or sports team or athletes, you know. And I recently heard that the about 43% of the Japanese population engages in some form of this oshikatsu, right? And then oshikatsu, life, travel, very much kind of across the line, I think. So, uh, one kind of a standing out example is this athlete named Shohei Otani, the Japanese born baseball superstar, who's won MVP 3 times in the last 4 years in the Major League Baseball in America. And so now his global fan base is expected to generate over $770 million in economic impact for the Los Angeles. Mostly from the fans actually traveling there, attending games at the Dodger Stadium, buying merchandise, and so on, right? So this is a great example. So, I mean, Taylor Swift concerts are definitely the one big subject that the industry talk about. That's the same thing, right? But I think the idea behind that is actually the people find the value of life in travel and vice versa. I think that's the key for us to think about the future. Okay, so take the example of the startups. Okay, right. So the one example you mentioned, right? Oh, the startups actually who just jump on the new trend like AI, right? They make a little cosmetics and then they say, "Hey, we are the AI company," right? Apparently, I mean, I don't like it, and many of our industry probably don't like it too. But I think why? I think it's kind of a more because in this context, what's important is actually what problems that they're trying to solve, right? And if the AI is the major component for them to do so, I can understand that. But let's say I being as a dragon, I am actually sitting at the off the stage and then looking at the pitches and then everything, and then I always question to them, right? Uh, what is a key component to solve your pain through the pain points of the users or consumers or travelers, and is that AI or something else? And if it's not the AI, don't please don't call your company or AI company. So it's it really kind of boils down to questions like, what's a real pain point you are trying to solve, and what is the most what is the major component, and So that that is all about the startups to me. I think it's so, and if the AI actually will help, of course, you will definitely want to leverage AI, right? So very simple, but a lot of actually startups actually ended up is kind of being distracted by the market trend, and then think about this way. So this is over the course of the last 2 decades, not just the AI, but the many other buzzwords, right? The social media, for example, mobile, right? And I've seen so many startups actually who fail, and then many of them is actually just to jump on a wagon without actually looking the essence of their business. They just like, I want to be an AI company. I want to be a social media company. I want to be a video company. So on, right? This goes on. So it's you can definitely understand, where I'm actually standing now, and then this is actually not going to change over the time. Even the next wave of a new technology after AI actually will hit the market, right? So back to the authenticity, right? So that's a keyword for me now, you know, to create a better future. So think about this example, right? Great sushi, right? Um, what makes it truly great, right? I think it's not just about the fresh fish or high quality rice, you know, but it's also very much about, let's say, chef's passion, or maybe kind of a subtle conversation at the counter, right? Or many other little details you can't quite explain, right? You just kind of in the zone, sitting at the counters, and the goes through the whole experience. That's why you pay a couple $100 or $300 or sometimes $500, right? Do you think it is replicated by the technology? No, obviously no, right? So I think AI or robotics can't easily replicate many things. So um, as we kind of look ahead the coming decades, right? I believe that this authenticity will be more important than ever, not just in the food as example, but in the travel, work experiences, how we live and everything, right? So I think this idea of authenticity is what will really shape our world, and it is what the people will seek out more and more, especially in an age of kind of automations or algorithm, right? So back to the same example of startups. Startup has to really kind of question themselves, right? What is our authenticities of their missions, and their purposes, products they are creating. I think it's ultimately it's all about that. So this is probably one of the most fun questions in the 20 years from now, right? That's almost not the 5 years. That's almost like a science fiction territory, I think. But that being said, I can kind of imagine that the Booking.com, for example, they're maybe still running endless A/B tests. Maybe maybe a 10 millions a day or something by then, all powered by AI. So at the same time, this is kind of ironic, but I can imagine that the people still complaining about how much of a time and effort it takes to plan and book their travels. You know, even though the everything has been optimized and automated by the technology. So because here's the thing, right? Travel is a part science, but it is also very much an art, I think. And true art, the human side of it, right, can never be fully replicated or automated, I think. So I guess this is kind of what we discussed quite a bit on the WIT over the course of the last couple years, I think, especially through those themes like the human revolutions or current like the next generation, right? We touch upon a little bit, but I think this is still very much important essence. And maybe that's exactly why we kind of love this space so much. Uh, um, and then one last thing. So I think the next 20 years will be a golden era for Asia. I really, really believe that, you know, Asian talents and cultural assets will definitely shine more globally. You know, not just the Shohei Otani I just talked about, but also maybe a Shogun or Squid Game in the entertainment space, or even the snow in Japan, which international skiers and snowboarders now call Japao. You never probably heard of it because, you know, you're probably not a skier or snowboarder, you know, which is actually described for the best powder snow in the world, right? So now you see a ton of skiers from Europe or North America or all over the Asia will all come to Hokkaido, Japan or Nagano, Japan. This is another great example, I think. I think that this list will only grow. I think that the Asia will have a more story to tell, more stars to celebrate, and maybe more reason for the world travel this way. So